Hello, guys. We're back again this week with a new community event. I'm Harsha, and I handle all things community here at the Morning Context. Um, so, for today's event, I remember a time that when for house parties you would be limited to choices. So you'd go like, if there's a blue lace available, please get it. But never did I imagine consuming healthy snacks with gin. True story, it happened. Grocery stores these days are flooded with new and emerging food brands and startups which are promising the next big product. Consumers are basically cluttered with an abundance of choices. And now, with the quick commerce there, a new brand pops up faster than you can sneeze. But this also means that successful brands now need to be hyper focused on strengthening their brand and product image more than ever. At the start of this year, my colleague Harveen spoke to our today's guest, Suhasini Sampath, the founder of Yogabar. And Suhasini had just recently sold Yogabar to one of India's largest conglomerates, ITC Ltd. So in that interview, Suhasini said two very interesting things. In India, unless you have the backing of a large player in food, it's very difficult to turn profitable. And she went on to add that profits are good, but cash is king. Uh, this leads to a lot of questions. Should entrepreneurs continue raising capital and building independently? Or is selling to an established player a strategic move? What are the key elements required to build and sustain a successful food brand in India? Is it just about like figuring out tastes and palate preferences? How important is health in this mix? To answer all of this and much, much more, please welcome Yogabar's founder, Suhasini Sampath. Suhasini's decision to sell Yogabar was a curious one, and we will get on to that during the course of this event. But if you want to read about it, I suggest you read the interview that we published. It is on the Morning Context website, and a subscription is required in case you want to refer it to someone. Also, you can gift it to someone using our gifting feature. It is the season of sharing. Joining Suhasini today is our editor-in-internet, Harveen Ahluwalia, and our executive editor, Surendar. Folks, I'd like to tell you that we'll also be taking questions at the end of the session. So if you have any, please put it in the chat box under the stage tab. So stage and chat. And if anyone from the Morning Context team is here, please help the people in the audience if you can to figure out in case they are confused. I'll hand over the mic now to Harveen. Harveen, if you could take it from here, please.
Thanks, Harsha. Thanks for that lovely introduction.
Thank you.
Thank you, Harsha. Welcome to TMC Dialogues, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us, Suhasini. This is one of the subjects that I quite like, which is what does it take to build a food brand in India? It's one of those categories which has always proven to be extremely difficult for the startup ecosystem. And I guess let's dive right in that not only did you pick food, you picked health foods within that. So to start with, I want to go back to the ideation stage, which is you come from a finance background. So how did you even land with food? And then within that, this niche that you've picked up?
So Harveen, you're right. I'm actually a full-bred finance person, and we'll come to the story on how that helps you build any kind of company that you actually set up. Whether you do an FMCG company, whether you do a finance company, how a finance background is actually very useful, and why that kind of distinguished Yogabar's journey a little bit. But we'll tie that into the answer later. But why I chose Yogabar is actually a very personal story. So I think I always ate healthy. Like when I was younger, I always munched on healthier things. And my sister and me were actually going to a yoga class in New York. We were going to the Bikram yoga class. Whenever we used to come out, we used to buy a Kind bar, which incidentally also, being a billion-dollar company sold to Mars, had a strategic acquisition. And when we saw the Kind bar, my sister said, if I had a bar like this in India, I would call it Yogabar. And we said we should trademark the name, whether we set up the company or not, we should trademark it. Maybe someday we'll go ahead and do it. And that's the origin of the idea. And after that, 2 years later, I came back to India, and then that's how we started Yogabar. because we felt at that point in time there was no packaged healthy food in the country.
Right, but outside it's still a little bit of an established sector. What was the thesis here when you researched the Indian market? Where was health foods in all of the sector?
So Harveen, I'm a bit like, I actually believe if you overthink things and you think too much about time, etc., you will never start a business. If I'd actually thought about this question while I started, I would have probably never done Yogabar, because the thesis at that point was that the TAM was zero. Like when we used to go to the Indian retailer, then he's like, India mein health kahan bikta hai, tasty to bikta hai, kya laye ho? Like, so obviously, thank God, I didn't really analyze the market. It was a business born purely out of passion and a commitment to say that let's change something fundamental about the way we are consuming food. And we started it not with the sense that, we wanted to create like this great company. We started it because we just enjoyed what we did. I'll also say this, while it appears that the TAM in the US, etc., is very high for health food, Cliff Bars has been a 30-year story. Kind Bar has been more than a 28-year story. Nobody talks about the first 12 years when people were building out. And that's kind of like been Yogabar's journey, right? We were the first ones to do clean ingredients and clean packaged food. But now you will see some sort of growth in this whole health food market, which, so it's a long journey. Even in developed markets, it's taken 40 years to get where it got today. It's just that they started much earlier because people were lots more outdoorsy in those countries than they are in India.
I'll rephrase my question then, that since the time you started, how has health evolved in food?
So I do think the market is still a fraction of the foods market. So I will say health food is still very, very niche. But what has happened is people have started recognizing that it will be the future of food. You can't ignore, like the larger players like a Kellogg's and Britannia can't ignore what Yogabar is doing. So you will see that Britannia has now launched a Me Too bar. Kellogg's has launched the variants that they never had before. Yogabar's dark chocolate muesli is great. So Kellogg's has also launched a dark chocolate muesli. They might not have copied the product very well. They might not have copied it with the same principles with which we made it. But is the market evolved? I would still say we are at that stage where health food has yet to take off in this country. Because the one differentiating factor between India and the rest of the world is India has access to cooks at home. So if you truly wanted to make something healthy, and Yogabar has always said this, is you would actually primarily eat food at home. So you would get your rotis, chapatis, everything made, like idlis, etc. Yogabar comes as a substitute for people who are on the go, who want to carry nutritious packaged food and have limited access to home cooked food. And the distinguishing factor between India and the rest of the world is that help is available at home. So health food will always be, a subset of what you can also cook and eat fresh. So in that light, I think the packaged food growth story in India will actually be a little bit, a lot smaller than other developed countries.
What are the numbers like?
I would say it's still like, including dry fruits, which is essentially like a commoditized product, the market would be about 3,000 crores, which is very small. Like, to give you context, chocolates alone is at least 50-60,000 crore category. The bhujiyas are about 20,000 crore. So compared to all that, health food, including dry fruits, are sitting at 3,000, 4,000 crores. So we are talking about a really, really small market size. So the TAM is actually not very favorable.
If we are taking a cue from this, if we look at the past decade of food startups in India, what has worked?
The thesis for me is, I do believe that food companies that have had some background in food, right? Like if you take Biba Foods, given that his parents had Fun Foods. If you take Sula, and you know that his parents actually had those grape vineyards. Or if you take Ching's and the fact that his father had the business before him, I do think that learning curve, attribution to having some experience where either your family has built some distribution or has had some exposure to the business has incrementally helped entrepreneurs in the food space. Otherwise, it still remains a very unproven thesis because, of course, of course, the Haldirams of the world have worked really well. So if you ask me, the Balaji wafers, the Haldirams, the Bikaner walas, all of that has worked really well. But so food that either targets a very large TAM, which is either in like the bhujiyas, the biscuits. Unibic has done really well. Again, very large TAM, right? So if you ask from a pure investment thesis, the TAM in India continues to be food that is, at the 5, 10, 15 rupees price point, is not really focused on health, comes from a legacy business. So I would say those are the broad constructs about tremendous success in the food space.
Can I just sort of take it from here, Harveen?
Yeah, sure, sir.
Yeah. So Suhasini, that you are a very objective person from your background, your finance, and taste is a very subjective sort of area, right? So how did you manage to sort of break it down and make it your Yogabar taste a little objective? Was it a problem, or was it again a gut feel that brought you to that point?
Very good question, actually, because food is actually religion in a country like ours. I actually think that the muesli of Yogabar that won was actually the tastiest muesli in the country. The reason why Kellogg's copied it was because the taste was so good, and I think. You would do objective assessments in the office. So we're a team of about 300 people, and you will see that polarized views of 300 actually reflect when you sell to a larger audience. And some products instinctively, when you do the food tests, etc., and you do like a sample evaluation within the office, and we do that as a process. Like after we've made the product, we also run multiple iterations within the office. We find that the products which have scored very highly also reflect back in the offtake and the repeat consumption when we put it out there in the market. So getting the taste profile is actually very, very critical, but health has its limitations. Like you can't make a product uber tasty. Like it's never going to taste like a samosa. It's never going to taste like that biscuit. But within the subset of healthy food, how do you kind of make it the tastiest alternative is something that we constantly work on.
So how long did this process of getting the product right take for you? Because I think that in food brands, the guy is very passionate about food and therefore says that this is the tastiest product out there and therefore I want to go and sell it, right?
Yeah.
There are hundreds of people who tell you, look, there is something wrong with this final taste. You need to modify it, but the entrepreneur still continues with that food product. So in your case, was that the case, or did you have to change the product before you finally settle for your final product?
So actually, Surendar, unlike most other companies, we've actually taken a lot of time with launching products. If you see, in the first 4 years of the organization, we only had bars. And we were still perfecting based on customer feedback. We were constantly perfecting the taste, right? I still don't think we have the perfect taste. I think it's still work in progress. We still need to make it better. We need to make it tastier. So we take a long time and we continue to iterate based on feedback that customers give us. I think the call that we took was we will take a really, really long time with product development. And we do multiple sensories. So the number of sensories we've done for our bars must run, I think, close to about 100 sensory evaluations of most of our products, which is not a typical process an MNC follows. So in that respect, I would say we always say things are work in progress. We never say we are fully happy. If there's something that we can improve, we'll constantly keep improving it.
Sure. I'm sticking to that ideas bit a little more. Your packaging is also very Uber in that sense. It's sort of a little, sophisticated for a larger audience. So was this a part of the product design that you arrived at that way, or was it your international outlook that made that look?
I think, Surendra, actually the answer to that question is, despite having a very conventional personality or conventional way of dressing, my exposure to, I mean, in a year, I watch 200 movies, and they could be Iranian movies, they could be very offbeat movies. I follow every single music style. I've seen every single documentary. I watch all documentaries of all fashion houses. So obviously, your design aesthetic, like the way your mind works, is, and I'm not even satisfied. I think our packaging is lacking. Like, I believe that we can have an even better design aesthetic. So I think the design aesthetic is a consequence of exposure. I think it's got to do with the fact that you just get exposed to things that look different, that speak a particular way. And I don't think that was by design. I think that is just the way you want to do things. And I think that's very founder driven. I think following a process with product or packaging would have actually led to inferior outcomes. I think doing it with what felt right has actually resulted in making the brand more memorable. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but I'm just saying that it
Sure.
comes from the heart. I mean, it comes from your own exposure.
So what I wanted to ask from this was that you have a very exclusive niche product because health is not so big, and then your packaging is very uber. So at that, did it strike you at some point of time that you're looking at a very, very narrow market, and therefore your product is not going to be very huge with your kind of styling? And did investors at some point of time have a problem with that, or were they saying that, oh, this is fantastic because we are very, very focused as a company?
Yeah, I do think we went through that. I do think a lot of investors did end up feeling like the TAM was small. But given how fast Yoga Bar was kind of growing, I do think the same investors looked at other companies who were much smaller who kind of wanted to ride the Yoga Bar wave. So I would say that while people might have re-looked at their decisions to not invest in Yoga Bar and invest in other companies just by looking at the success that we were able to show. But I'll come back to this. I actually think the Indian audience design aesthetic, I don't think our design packaging actually doesn't speak to everybody. I'll give you this example. Whenever I land in Delhi, right, like I would take a taxi and the taxi guy would be playing a version of Tupac or like Dr. Dre that I would be like, listen, where did you get this version? And I think the exposure to Western music and Western way of dressing is reflective across India. I wouldn't necessarily call somebody who's even a construction worker not fashionable because I do think everyone has a fashion sense. So I don't think our product looked luxurious. I think it was well designed. Like I think it looked happy. It conveyed a certain emotion. But our intention and our largest customer continues to be DMart. And DMart talks to India, doesn't talk to like the South Bombay kid, right?
That's a yeah.
Yeah,
That's a very nice insight that the largest customer is DMart, right?
yeah. So I do think the design aesthetic made people feel like everybody had a story with Yoga Bar, and that's what we're most proud of with Yoga Bar. We don't talk to a particular person. We talk to everybody. Of course, our price points. I will still say that our price points are still quite expensive. We're not at the 5, 10 rupees, 20 rupees price point that I would like to be at. But hopefully, with the ITC partnership, we'll be able to create pack sizes that can kind of penetrate the market much more. But our design sense was never uber luxurious or anything. We're actually the kind of packaging that I think even my help at home thinks that our packaging is quite cute. And for me, that's a victory. Like when Sunita looks at my packaging and says, Didi, ye kahan milta hai? And she tells me her husband bought the Yoga Bar in Supermart at a discount. Those are victories. For me, like I feel that's real India. So yeah.
I actually have a follow-up from the question before, where we were talking about how long did it take to get the taste right, and it's obviously still a work in progress. But you said that you took 4 years, and it was just bars at the time. Uh, Obviously, larger companies do have that luxury of spending that much time, but for a startup, what role did taste play in the pace at which the company has grown?
I think a very large part, Harveen. I think we were one of those few companies that said that if we don't realize a certain repeat metric, we don't think a product will be successful. Since intuitively Yoga Bar had never had the capital to really splurge on marketing, we would make sure that our products were actually very, very good. Like for us, our repeat rates are north of like 40% for all our products. And that's a really critical metric for a company of our size to grow with the kind of capital we choose to grow at. So yeah, we took a lot of time. Like until we saw people reordering, etc., it wasn't even given that we would launch those products in the market. We would do all of those trials with like launching on our website and calling each and every customer. So I've been involved in all of those calls. Like we would call 100 customers every week, and the team would take detailed notes on what are people saying. And until we were convinced that those people were reordering, we wouldn't even send it out there. Like we were not one of those companies who lived from fundraise to fundraise. I don't care if my fundraise happens or not. I want to create a brand that will last, like people are really proud of. So, and that's why I'm saying, like even when we started, if I had to think of time, I should have started a personal care company. The amount of effort and blood, sweat, and tears that went into building Yogabar with such a strong product and design aesthetic, my returns would have been far higher to target a larger time. But we still chose to do this. Yeah.
I'll cue a Mama Earth mention here. But before I get into funding and venture capital, I have a basic question, and so please feel free to chime in, which is that what is an ideal repeat rate for a successful food product?
I think it has to be, we are very high on that spectrum, but I think if you're north of 30% and you have a gross margin of about 45 to 50%, you're okay.
Got it.
Our gross margins are lower, so we need to make sure that our repeat rates are very high because we don't have the delta on the marketing that we can do.
There is one problem in food that I think you and I have also spoken about, and which keeps coming up, where one product is successful and people start associating the brand with that product as well. How do you expand category on category?
Yeah, so Harveen, we face that dilemma, right? Like because our brand name also had the word bar in it. So our brand, even the muesli that we sell under the brand name Yogabar. Even the chocos we sell under Yogabar. But we realized that like our same customers who are buying the bars were very happy to buy into the remaining products in the brand. And we had this thesis: if 100,000 people buy for a certain value every month, you'll become a 100 crore company. And that thesis played out beautifully for us. If I remember correctly, it's 100,000 people buying 12 products every month. You would end up being a 100 crore company or some math. And that math worked out very, very well for us.
That's quite interesting, actually. Now, again, this is very, very small TAM, the numbers we are talking about. And obviously, we've discussed this before, that it is a small company. We've gone through this, but I do want you to touch upon your decision to raise very little money and very little money from venture capital investors as well. You never went from one fundraise to another, and you never expanded that quickly as well as we've seen some of the food companies.
So having a couple of things, right? Our manufacturing facility is actually owned by us. So we actually had capital expenditure that we expended with our venture capital raise. And we were also the kind of company that had about 145 days locked into working capital. So any ARR that we had, your annual run rate at the time of fundraise, assume 1.5 times that was always stuck in debtors and inventory. Right? So if when you minus this, the net capital that we had was roughly about 40 or 50 crores to grow this brand. We didn't have more money than that. That was from inception till date. The reason to do that is 2 or 3 things, Harveen. I think we were and this goes back to the fact that you're a finance person and you're quite realistic about these things. Given where the TAM was and given the fact that building a distribution would at least take 300 crores. To build sensible offline distribution, you have to invest 300 crores. You will historically see that all the other venture funded companies have expended that amount of money. And we're talking about good executors, right? Now, if I raise another 300 crores, dilute myself, and I have to make sure that the 300 crores of distribution spend is resulting in repeats and my sales team is actually working effectively, would I have been able to assure that the brand would not be cash starved? It was too big a risk to take. I don't want my brand to die at any cost because it has been years of hard work. It's a great brand. I'm not very confident that I can build distribution. After you build distribution, you have to be sure that the distribution system is working for you, which is unproven as of today. You till date, I cannot say that any startup is actually doing that distribution really well. With a shelf life of 4 to 6 months, there's no question of dumping in the market. Like when you have a 24-month shelf life, you can go from fundraise to fundraise. When you have 4 to 6 months shelf life, there is no way your stock is not coming back within one funding cycle. So it's not a risk I wanted to take at all. So I did not want to subject my business to a cash, like a cash churn. I might as well give it to somebody who has those strong relationships and who can drive distribution the way it deserves to be run. So yeah, I mean that really summarizes the decision to sell.
You break down everything into numbers and you fix the starting point and end point. Was this sale of this brand in your mind much before you actually did it? Was it always looming somewhere in your head that at about 100 odd crores, this is...
Yeah.
I have a second additional question to this, which comes to exits, that most of the food brands, at least we've seen, have been meant to be acquired by larger companies. And I don't think we've seen any story in startups so far, which is just about ready to go to public markets. Is that the ideal exit in this business?
I'll give you context. Kind and Cliff Bars, the largest success stories in the US, were both strategic exits. And these are developed public markets. There must be a reason why people churning out 1,000 crores of profit after being billion-dollar companies, 8,000 crore top line or 16,000 crore in the case of Cliff, generating 2,000, 3,000 crores of cash profit, decided to do strategic exits. Like there is a proper reason why food companies always do strategic exits. And it's because relationships of 100 years cannot be replicated just by cash alone. But to answer also Surendar's question, I would say there were a lot of inbounds for the brand. I will say with Yogabar, the brand always exceeded its revenue. I would say it was interesting to strategics right from when we were 30 crores to when we were 60 crores to when we were 100 crores. It was attractive just because of the way we were building it. And we realized that, it came to a point where we had to move from 5,000 stores to like 20,000 stores, and we had to take a call. Are we taking cash in to do that and diluting ourselves? Or are we going to go with a larger player who already has the distribution muscle with them? And then we took that call. But the option was available to us even when we were much smaller. And obviously, once like large companies come and talk to you, you also realize that you've built an asset of value. It's also the confidence that, you also can't go into the market failing in the process. You have to be sure you'll succeed when you run a strategic process. So the fact that we knew that many large companies wanted us helped us take that call as well. So I don't want to also say that we just knew everything. I also think sometimes that knowledge comes to you because somebody else takes that first move.
Right. You now that you say that a lot of this food brands eventually get into strategic sale, do you also know of several food brands that have died, very good food brands that have died because they did not do strategic sale? Because you look around in India, you can think of at least 10 brands that you knew were all over the place but doesn't exist today, right? So is this a aspect of the food industry that many promoters don't see exits and therefore those brands die when they are not realized?
I think there are so many of those examples, Surendar. Like take, for example, the Naturo bars that we used to have when we were young, or certain products of Paris that don't have the chocolate that of Paris that we don't eat anymore, or some chips, or like even a very recent example, right? Raw Presseries exit, or Love It chocolates, or food is hard. Like, it's not slam dunk. Like, it's not easy to build a food brand, and for a strategic to think that it's valuable to have that brand in their portfolio. Like, when a couple of people come to me for investment now, I say, it's a great business, but your eventual exit has to be a strategic. It can't be like, I will IPO at 500 crores. Because for a food brand, there are very few food brands that can in silo be an IPO-able company, because you need to have enough number of people trading the share also for it to sustain the stock market. So and you can't your ideal exit has to be, how will a strategic acquire me? And for that, you need to create a brand that's not in somebody's portfolio. So the multiplication factor for a food company is actually several times harder than anything else.
Right.
I want to ask a couple of nuts and bolt questions, which is, one is, let's talk distribution. We've had this wave, and this goes beyond food as well, which is the digital only, and then offline, and then digital first, and whatever these terms mean in the long run. But even though it's fairly clear the way this trajectory has been, what is what has been sort of the ideal way to build an online presence and then get into offline? And in that, I do want to also talk about general trade and modern trade. How do you figure out where your products sit?
Yeah. So I think, and in food, don't do D2C. Any product that has margin less than 70% should not be selling on their own website, except for getting trials or feedback. Now, if you're using it as a feedback mechanism to talk to consumers to improve your product, go ahead and sell on your website. Otherwise, for most investors, you should ignore all of that sales. That sales is just not sales. Okay, it just means that you've marketed and somebody has come to try your food. The first place you should go is obviously quick commerce, because you have the Instamart, Swiggy's, Dunzo, because that's the audience that is most tuned to try out new things. So that's the first place to be in. The second place is the Amazons and Flipkarts of the world. And you will see customer reviews. Take those customer reviews very, very seriously. Fix the product if the product needs to be fixed. Then you go to modern trade. Modern trade margins are crazy, but you need small teams. The advantage of modern trade is you can deal with modern trade without distributor intervention and with a very, very small sales team. So the cost to get in is high from a margin perspective, but low from an entry barrier perspective. And general trade is really the last leg. In the 10 years of Yogabar, not 14, 10 years of Yogabar, we are still available only in 4,000 general trade stores after doing this for so many years, because managing general trade and managing collections is very, very critical. So you can show revenue, but as ITC very nicely educated us, the revenue in your books is equal to the cash that you collect. There is no other revenue other than the cash that you collect. So having debtors, etc., is not useful.
That's very nicely put. The second part to this question is marketing. Food traditionally has a lot to do with endorsements and celebrities and television advertisements and newspapers. You haven't done as much marketing. So in the modern sense, in the digital sense, how has marketing of a food brand evolved? Where does it sit now?
I think with food though, Harveen, I do think the marketing starts at a certain level of revenue. I don't think in the 0 to 100 crore journey, you can actually afford that cost in your P&L. I may be wrong. I don't know. I'm yet to be proven wrong. I do know that a lot of young brands spend a lot of money, but I don't see that delta happening on sales. In fact, I know somebody sponsored the IPL. It hasn't worked out very well. I would definitely say that, and I don't know if I'm making the wrong call, right? Maybe Yogabar would have been 300 crores if he spent 100 crores on marketing. I will never know that. But intuitively to me, I do feel that you have to build a certain velocity and a certain distribution. You have to be present in at least 30,000 stores before you do your marketing. And that already means that you need to be at a certain level of revenue. I think that inflection point is at about 170 to 200 crores. I don't think you should be doing too much of marketing prior to that. I do think you should use influencers for specific products. Like if you're doing protein or you're doing like protein consumption using protein influencers, those are useful. When you have a specific use case of your product, like if you're launching children's products and you use some mom bloggers to talk about why your product is better than your competitors, that can be quite useful because those are it's mostly information dissemination. I would say that a food company at a startup stage should do information dissemination, not marketing, because marketing is basically that your packaging is all your marketing that you've got. That's your marketing real estate.
Did your view get changed or influenced in any way while talking to the larger companies?
No, I think ITC is aligned with what we are saying. And I think ITC is one of those few companies that started late on the FMCG journey, but has still built some breakout brands, right? And I do believe that there was a marriage in the way we were thinking about the way we should spend money to build the brand. So yeah, I think we would, I think they appreciated the fact that we were thinking about it the right way.
Okay.
We might hit a scale where we do some of that marketing at the end of next year. So we might do it, but we will already be at a very high. We would be at that scale where we are available at those 30,000 stores and our revenue justifies that marketing. I don't think you can put marketing before revenue. I think it's repeat sales, distribution, and then marketing.
Wow,
that's the order to follow. Yeah.
Sorry,
Sure,
I think
go ahead.
Surya is trying to say something.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, when you knew that your product was more or less accepted, was there a point in time that things looked very great to you and you said that this is not going to work out? Did that also happen? Because again, it's all structured, right? And you said that marketing will come later. So your product is good, things are going okay, but there is a bridge that needs to be crossed. Yeah. At what time did that happen in your journey?
I think that in an entrepreneur's journey, if somebody tells you that doesn't happen, like it's not telling. I mean, it happens all the time. Like I would say that there are fewer up moments than there are down moments. I'll give you an example. When COVID happened, my head of online sales, like the only thing that was working for us was online sales at that point. He decides to leave and join Kellogg's. And I'm showing negative sales because all the offline sales have come back. Whatever we sent out in the month of March, everything has come back. In April, so we're showing negative sales. Elevation's money had just come in. But you know, here's the thing: when you have the right partnerships and people ask the right questions, you can fix some of it. You have to be receptive to listening to what is going wrong in your business. We had to fix gross margins. We had to fix the fact that where it's not selling in offline stores, you need to make sure that you have processes in place to not have dumping and all of that. And the thing is to always be receptive of the thing. It's okay for things to go wrong. It's completely fine. But you have to admit that things are going wrong and you have to admit to have a process to fixing them. I think that's what's important. And I think we were quite realistic that way. Like we would say that things have not really worked and we should relook some of this. And some of our product introductions also didn't work. Like we would think that this is going to, you know, we had launched a butter that we said was going to take from Nutella sales, and it was a disaster. Because Nutella's taste, we can't match Nutella's taste. So that was one of our worst launches. We launched a butter in a pack and it looked great, but we did negative sales on that product. So,
got it.
On right partnerships.
Honesty, like you should always be completely honest about the business with all stakeholders. Like you should tell people, and then you'll get the right advice and you'll get time and capital to fix it.
See, it more or less appears like a generic sort of question for a startup that every morning when you get a very bad comment from one of your best customers also, you feel that the world is over, right? That happens every day in a startup. But I'm talking about that moment when you actually thought the bridge to profitability is just not happening and therefore there's a chance that I'll close my business.
We are still not profitable. Like we're not profitable by a mile. I'm not saying that we are, but right now, but we have a path to get there. So that particular, but we were always well capitalized. We didn't overspend. We were always able to turn the tap off because we never were extravagant with our spends. So working at break even would have lasted very, very long. I don't think we put the company through financial stress, but I think we did feel the stress of a bad P&L during the months when COVID lasted. Like it was bloodbath. Like those months, our revenues had plummeted, and we had to build up revenue right like as if we started the business all over again. So yeah, that was challenging.
I have just one more question on this. Uh, i- is it because, I mean, you're an investment banker. Suppose you were to multiply your scale by 20 times. Would that have been far more difficult? And was it easier because you're 100, your top line is 100 crores? Or do you think that the effort and the pain would be the same even if you are like 20 times?
Um, yeah, I think if you're saying that if we were at 2,000 crores, would there be an effort and pain involved? I think I'm sure that Ching's owner, who is at about what 600 crores, has also made the decision to sell. So my intuitive answer to that would be that even sometimes people who are 10 times our size are still making the same decision as us, and there must be a good reason why they're making that decision. So I wouldn't know what it feels like to have a far larger business, but looking at somebody else who's in that position and making a certain call, that's the intuitive assumption that I would make, that it's still hard.
Sure. Thanks. Yeah.
On the note of partnerships, I just wanted to go back to the trajectory we've had in food startup ecosystem. So many terrible outcomes. I don't think we've seen a large enough success story so far, which has emerged. Um, a lot of it is because these companies raised a lot of money in, say, pre 2016, 2015 era, and then just could not um, grow into their valuation and everything. There is obviously, you mentioned there's the raw example. There are even brands in the alcohol space, if we include that. Beverages, dime a dozen. Um, what role has venture capital played in food startup ecosystem, and how has that point of view changed now?
Um, I would say, if I should be honest, if venture capital had never supported food startups, I wouldn't be where I am today. So I'm tremendously grateful. I think there has to be a certain rationality to valuations. You chase companies to make wrong decisions because you don't get in at the right price. A venture capital has only two jobs: you get in at the right price and you get out at the right price. Correct? I know for a fact that when the ITC deal had happened and the information was public, it was there in the newspaper. I know that a very large venture capital fund funded somebody in a similar space, one third our size, at 2x the valuation. Those errors are what causes problems. Like, if everyone on the table takes a step back, is very realistic on where the business is, where the business will grow, looks at history, assesses history properly to make future prediction, I would say you would not have so many problems on the table. The problems happen because people are just not giving each other a reality check. I would say in that sense, we had very sensible venture capital board members on our seat. And I would say, as entrepreneurs, we always saw ourselves in the mirror and questioned how much we actually deserved. Um, I have the privilege of saying that every negotiation I ever went in and came out of, both parties on the table, not me alone, always felt we got a fair deal. And I think that's an art. I do believe that for both parties to believe that the transaction has been fair is critical, and it almost always determines future outcomes. You might think at one point of time that you got a really good deal and the venture capitalist has valued your business 2x, but at some point all of that catches up. Both parties have to always believe a deal is fair. And that's what is the hallmark of a good deal.
Yeah. Uh, there's food all over the place right now. If you look at social media, everybody's talking of food, and food is very, very common. But as somebody who ran an organized company, where do you think there is a shortage of, professionals, talent, executives in the food sector? And where do you think that you need to show this up if you really want to build brands and companies in the food business?
I think the fact that most large companies will always be motivated by profit is a fact. I don't think we can change much about that. Um, I think, like the way California almonds kind of really advertised people to eat almonds for health. I don't think unless a non-profit body especially advertises the need for food to be made healthier, there is going to be a change. I do think larger companies need better support in their R&D departments. I don't think that Kellogg's cannot make healthier products. I'm sure they can. I just don't think they're pushed to because their profits are just that great. And there's no need to do it. And companies are motivated by profit. Individuals are motivated by mission. And therefore, nonprofit organizations have to motivate the way consumers think about their food. I don't think companies will ever do it. I don't think they have the need to do it.
I think that Pepsi did one such experiment, and we know what's the result of that. Right?
I mean, Pepsi. I'm still debating in my mind how Pepsi even gets away with it. Like,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean,
sure.
I'll leave it there.
Yeah.
I think we're coming to a close now, but before that, I can't not ask this question, which is that obviously female founders, we have the numbers, face a very hard time getting funded, acceptance, meetings, everything. Um, I've asked you this before, but I do want to touch upon it again, that how has your journey been from a gender perspective, and what has your experience been in venture capital?
Um, Harveen, and I've said this, and people who know me
Yeah.
know I speak from the heart. I don't think I would have been as successful if I was a man. I'm far more successful because I'm a woman. I get a seat at the table because I'm a woman. I don't think I've achieved as much as a lot of male founders, but I think I get a lot of voice. I get a lot of representation. And therefore, I've only benefited from my gender. I think people have been, I don't know. And I said this to you even before the call. I think people are just nice to me, and I don't know why. Yeah. So I actually feel if you're a woman founder, there is no better time. There is just no better time. Like India is so accepting. Like you'll even find like going to a retailer, people will be like, we want to support this business because it's a woman-run business. And I use that card. I think the fair question to ask is, do you think, Suhasini, you would have been as successful if you were a man? And my answer would be maybe not. I don't know if I can say with certainty, but maybe not. I think a lot of doors open because people just wanted to support women entrepreneurs.
Great. Before we open up the floor, I have a question, which is that if anybody is looking at food today and is looking at the startup ecosystem today, how should they approach the space? What is the one learning that you would summarize this sort of journey into?
I'd say be prepared for a longer journey. Like, don't build for 3 years, 5 years. Build for something that you truly feel passionate about and take capital as needed so that you learn through the process. Like, don't shortcut the process. Somewhere the product will suffer, the customers won't be happy, and you won't build a legacy. Like, if you want to build a legacy brand, put the time and hard work learning everything that it takes, right? Don't substitute capital for a good business. Don't substitute marketing for a good business. They all aid a good business and a good product. So yeah, I would say spend time on building that first product.
Great. Let's open it up, Harsha.
Hey, hi Suhasini. So I'll open the floor for the questions from the audience now. Quite a lot of them. So we'll start with Ravikant. So Ravikant asks, how important is repeat purchases vis-a-vis first trial for a new product category like cereal bar, and how is it measured / monitored?
Very important, especially for a new category. You can measure it because Amazon gives you those repeat purchase reports. You can actually download that report on Amazon. It's available to everybody who's a seller. You should also, as a promoter, get involved in doing those calls to customers, asking them if they're repeating, and also looking at same store sales. Like if you are selling in a store, is the same store buying more and more? Those are good indicators of repeat purchases. But it's very important. I think it's the number one metric to know if you have a hit product on your hands or not.
Next question is from our managing editor, Prince Thomas. And Prince is asking that what kind of change has a big corporate like ITC brought in, especially in terms of strategy and product development?
Yeah. I think ITC has been very smart about the way they've done this transaction. We operate as an independent company completely. So ITC still doesn't have control. And they've been great partners. So I think the things that we do best, they've left to us. So there is, in terms of product development, there's zero interference. Unless we want to develop a product, like we're developing a protein drink for kids. So we will ask ITC's R&D team, can we use their manufacturing facility? Can we try and do mock trials of our product, right? In terms of strategy, ITC, we present the kind of strategy that we want to go through, and ITC gives us specific inputs. Like here, you might choose these markets where the marketing delta is much more cheaper or more effective than these markets. So it's very, very objective inputs, which basically save you money. And that's kind of the interaction at this point of time. How do we look at a P&L and make the P&L better? Their primary help is in terms of expanding the offline GT distribution. That is what ITC is focusing on helping Yogabar with at this point in time.
Next question is from Ankit. Ankit is asking, are you planning to document your learnings as a playbook? I think
so Ankit, I never felt like I have enough things to actually share that could make an interesting playbook, but I think the Morning Context article actually covers the whole story. I don't know if I have much more to say than that, but yeah, I mean, if people, and I do a couple of LinkedIn posts, so that's about what I do at this point in time.
Yeah, so Ankit, the book is basically our Morning Context subscription. Buy it. Next, we have a question from Shomik Mukherjee. Shomik is asking, how did you select new categories for the brand to extend to? Also a question I asked myself, why muesli?
Yeah, so basically, for a food company to really rationalize your operations, the muesli is basically the bar, but in a powder form. Our bars are basically muesli made in a convenient form like a bar. So your muesli is actually powdered bars. So it makes the process and creates one more format which a customer is already used to. The Indian consumer already knew muesli. A bar is a category creator, right? So you're essentially selling the same product in two different formats.
Next question is from Abhishek. Abhishek is asking, what is the first thing you would do differently if you were starting Yogabar today?
I would probably have started it as a yoga brand that included food and personal care, and I would build very high quality personal care products, original, clean labeled personal care products along with the brand. So I would have taken the brand a little bit higher and done food and personal care. That's what I would have done differently. Because now I feel like I should have targeted higher outcomes. And of course, as an entrepreneur, you're never satisfied. So yeah, that's what I would have done differently.
We have Shomik again, and Shomik is asking, why do Indian food brands who are early movers in a product category not able to hold their leadership positions? Example, Bagris and muesli versus Kellogg's.
The specific example of Bagris is they have super healthy financials. So if you actually look at the Bagris financials, they're at about 150 crores of revenue and 30 crores of PAT. Now, if I was in Bagris shoes and I was generating 30 crores of PAT for the last 15 odd years, I don't know how their financials are for the entire 15-year period, I would be thinking to myself, why do I need to change so much about my business? Because it's a very healthy cash flow for a family run 100% owned business, right? So I would say that the agility comes from the fact that you are on a treadmill. And it also comes from the fact that Bagris is a family run business, whereas Kellogg's has invested the 1,000 crores in actually creating that marketing marketing aura for the brand, which Bagris didn't do. Bagris chose to keep their cash when they generated cash. They didn't reinvest it back into the business. So it's a financial call. It's less to do with anything else.
We have Amit here. Amit is asking, what was your understanding of and approach to brand registration and protection when you started Yoga Bar and when you had stabilized the business? Was this an expense you wish you never had, or did you prioritize brand registrations?
No, I mean, I think trademarks are everything. I think you can't do any funding round or a strategic acquisition if your trademarks are not in place. Our trademark was in place much before we even incorporated the company. So yeah, we take these things very seriously.
Next question is from Abhinav. Abhinav is asking, what, according to you, made the customers to trust your product and buy in the initial stages, considering the fact that there is very little communication reaching them in any other means?
Actually, Yogabar for the first couple of years, our Instagram handle was just user generated content. We just used to use something called a repost app and repost content. Usually, a lot of family members found the brand and gave it to their family members. We could afford to do that at that point of time because we were the only company selling clean label products. And it was just a unique market offering. So everyone was talking about it. We don't have that competitive advantage today because there are lots of brands in the market. But at that point of time, we were the only ones who had a clean label product. And that made customers give it to their family, and we didn't need to do marketing at that point.
I'm so sorry. I had a follow-up to the brand registration questions. Did you ever see any of the copycats in the market?
Oh God, have you seen the latest products of Britannia and Kellogg's dark chocolate muesli? They even copied our ad. We called ourselves the tastiest muesli, and that's the ad Kellogg's is running. Like, it's not bad enough that they copied the product. They also were so lazy about the advertising. But those things you can't, like the Indian laws don't allow you to go after all of that. You can't really trademark formulation of a product. You can't trademark product claims. You can only trademark the product name. So the Yoga Bar trademark is what we have.
So what do you do in such a case then when all this happens?
Nothing. You just feel bad about it. Yeah, you just feel bad about it.
Got it.
Next question again from Shomik. Shomik is asking, do you think it's possible to get to 45 to 50% gross margin levels given in packaged food, given the high level of discounting in e-commerce and MT?
This is a question, this answer depends on how much you want to sell. If you want to sell 100 products in a month, yes, you can get whatever gross margin you want. If you want to sell 1 lakh products a month, you have to discount because you want to reach out. It is a marketing strategy. If you ask me, discounting is the way to get to a lot of customers in the initial days. You want to trial out your product as much as possible. So I would say a realistic gross margin, net of everything, promos and everything, is probably 30% in food.
You've said that so Abhinav has a follow-up question. He's saying, you just said that the large companies don't focus on healthier products in return for lesser profits. Can that be the key strategic mantra for any food startup who wants to flank the larger companies and build a niche?
I mean, I don't know how to answer this question. Are you asking if you build healthier products, can you be more profitable? Because you will tell people that larger companies are not focusing on it because of lesser profit. It's a very confusing way of educating the customer. I don't think food startups have the capital to actually go after larger companies. I think just using most of your marketing dollars talking about how great your product is what you can focus on. So as a marketing strategy, to go after other companies is not the wisest thing to do. We've seen food companies do that and not be very successful.
Jitansh is asking, Yogabar built a new category in India for protein bars from 2014. What is the next big thing / category in the food industry that will go big in the next 4-5 years?
If I tell you the answer to that question, what will I do after my sale has fully gone through? I'm kidding. I don't know. I think it could be something to do with protein foods. I think protein could be a very, very big thing. I think different formats of protein, and maybe a healthier Horlicks or something like that. I think that's a category that could be disrupted. Large market, better products can be built. Yeah, that could be an interesting category.
Keshav here was asking what has been the revenue model so far, and for future, what do you think would the product portfolio look like in a couple of years?
I mean, our revenue model is simple. We only sell, categories of healthy food, clean, natural products. And the product portfolio, I think we're also looking at that protein segment. We're thinking about how to disrupt the drink segment. If we crack the product in the next 12 months, I think that's the only launch we are looking at during my time with Yogabar prior to handing it over to ITC. But other than that, I think we're just looking at our existing portfolio of products.
Ravikant here asking, how do you foresee digital transformation for the health food industry, and what impact can it have?
I think the only digital transformation that I see is I do think that influencers can get more powerful in the whole food advocacy space. I don't think personalized meals or personalized products are still going to be very successful in India because it's going to be very expensive to do that in a country like us.
This is the last question. I hope so, unless we get something more. So, Ankit here again asking you that have you ever toyed with the idea of a subscription business for healthy meals? What challenges do you think it might face around scaling up slash profitability?
I think the idea healthy meals has been tried by many people, and there are too many players in the market. Whether you think about Eat Fit, whether you think about, um, I mean,
Raw had a subscriptions business, I think.
lots of them, yeah, lots of
Raw.
raw, okay, lots of companies, right? I think the challenges around it is I'm not convinced that I cannot cook a healthy meal at home versus what you will deliver to me at a higher cost, and the Indian consumer will always think that way. So I think the primary thing is over a period of time keeping that consistency in the healthy meal when I don't have goals. Like suppose I was doing a healthy meal where you are delivering me 1,000 calories a day with 60 grams of protein and it comes to me in a certain format. I might still consider it because I can't plan it that well with the help that I have. But just a healthy meal is not going to cut it. It's not an offering that I cannot do for myself at home. So, the customer has to see value in subscribing to that healthy meal, which I personally believe that any food cooked outside cannot be healthier because you see the ingredients that go into what you make at home.
Just an additional question to that subscription model. Do you think that midday meals could sort of start? Yoga Bar could make it to the midday meals that the government gives.
Um, we tried. Did end up with with a 10 rupees bar actually, like a millet meal, like a millet protein meal. But I think the government still needs to and it's fair for the government to say this. They would much rather give eggs, right, in their midday meal, cheaper, more nutritious, natural. And I'm quite open about saying an egg will always be far healthier. And if I were looking at a midday meal and I was sitting on the side of the government, that's exactly what I would do. Cheaper, more efficient, higher quality of protein delivered because 4 grams of protein with every egg. So, but if they end up doing something that's vegetarian and want to do more than one meal, I think it could be an interesting option.
One last question, and then we wrap up.
Yeah.
This is from Shomik again. Shomik is a fan. With 30% gross margins, is it possible to invest in A&P and pay for a standalone organization at revenues less than 250 to 300 crores? If not, then is a strategic sale inevitable?
What is A&P again? I'm basically
Same
making an
question.
investment call for some
Ah,
company that you're evaluating, but I need more
yeah.
details on what is A&P.
Shomik, if you're there in the audience, could you please just elaborate on it in the comments? Okay, I think advertising and promotion. Okay, so thank you,
Okay.
Varun, for answering us, answering that for us.
It really depends. If the standalone organization, I would actually, if I were the investor on that side, I would make a few calls to a couple of large companies and try and find out if the brand or company in question is worthy of a strategic acquisition. I wouldn't take that call unless I have also protected the downside risk of investing in a company. If you are doing this brand in, say, like a Me Too Cola or a Me Too, I don't know, like you need to pick up the phone, talk to a couple of strategic people and figure out whether a strategic will buy it at all. And if you're saying that a 30% gross margin standalone entity with revenue less than 250 crores can go to IPO, I personally believe that's not possible. But I'm willing to see if my thesis is right or wrong.
All right, I think that's about it. We're almost close to our time limit now. And thank you, Suhasini. As Harveen said, you answered a lot of questions, and you are definitely, you've answered so many things in just like an hour. It was quite a packed conversation. And thank you. Thanks for all the learnings that we had in this session. Thank you for joining in. And Harveen and Surendar, thank you for leading this conversation as always. And folks who are there in the audience, I'd like to remind you, if this is not, if you have not had enough of Suhasini, this event, we do have a very stellar interview that we published with her earlier in the year. It's on the Money Context website. You all are subscribers, but you can obviously go ahead and gift it to somebody else, and do share it online with your with other people. And yeah, keep tuning in every fortnight. We keep doing this event every fortnight. We keep having these events every fortnight. We're always here, and that's it. Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you. Thank you.
Thank
See
you so
you.
much for taking the time, Suhasini. Always a
Thank
pleasure.
you. Thank you. See, thank you,
Bye.
everybody on the call. Yeah. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.